Hello, and welcome to Series 2 of the Filmmaker's Playbook. My name is Jason Branagan, and this is a podcast all about filmmaking. This week, my guest is editor Tony Kearns. Throughout his career, Tony has edited iconic music videos for artists like Prodigy, Blur, The Chemical Brothers, Coldplay, Radiohead, Paul McCartney, and more. His film and TV credits include Miss Scarlet and the Duke, Smother and Black Mirror, including Bandersnatch. Today, Tony takes us behind the scenes of his iconic career in music videos, his pivot into long-form drama, the qualities that make a great editor, and he shares his top tips for emerging editors. I hope you enjoy today's episode. Thank you for listening. Tony Kearns, welcome to the Filmmaker's Playbook. Thank you very much for joining me. How are you?
Thank you for having me, Jason, and I'm very well, thank you. Yes, I've had a very nice lunch, and I'm feeling very cozy. I'll try not to nod off.
I'll hopefully be able to keep you awake with some good questions. We'll see how we go.
That's it. That's the key.
First and foremost, you've edited some utterly iconic work, but before we get to some of that, I would love to get a sense of how it all started and how you ended up becoming an editor.
Okay, well, it all started quite a long time ago, and I'll be giving my age away. In the early 1980s, I was a civil servant in Dublin. I just gone straight from school to being a civil servant. I was actually joined the civil service on the same day that John Lennon was shot dead, so that wasn't a good day for either of us. And I then got a place a couple of years later in I think the first media studies course in Ireland. It was a media studies course in the College of Marketing Design. And I am resigned from the civil service, which is received a bit like when your man Andy escaped in the Shawshank Redemption. So, you've resigned. A pensionable job. My God, that was in the early 80s, so things were pretty difficult. So in that course, I discovered editing. I was always interested in films and film history and film. I'd have books about that, but never really about the actual making of films. So I was a bit, unaware. And so I discovered editing, and I really enjoyed it. The course finished in mid-1984. Within days, I was in London 40 years ago. June 13th, 1984, I went to London. And I had two ideas. One was I thought I could try graphic design, and then the other was editing. I discovered quickly that I didn't have the portfolio or the knowledge or any way of getting into graphic design. And so I eventually got a job as a runner in a post-production company called Visions, which at the time there were a lot of really cool videos from that period were being edited and post-produced there. So that was a good place to be. And then within a few months, I was working as a trainee taper operator, then became a trainee assistant editor, and then so that's how I got in. And I was very lucky in that when I was assisting, I assisted really interesting and dynamic editors who were doing some mad stuff with music videos. I then worked for another company, and then in 1989, over 5 years after arriving in London, I went freelance as an editor. From the first 15 years after that, it was exclusively music videos, which was based on what I'd learned and the contacts I made from assisting on music videos.
If we were to jump back before coming to London, I was going to ask you what led to the interest, or what was the impetus to join the media course?
It was just a shot in the dark. Somebody I knew who was in the course, because there's all kind of contacts and pull. There was no meretricious aspect. No, it was pretty much old school, who you knew. So I knew somebody well who was in that course, and somebody dropped out, and so he contacted me and said, "There's a place here if you want it." And I said, "Okay." And I didn't really know what I was getting into, but I knew I had to get out of the civil service. So I took it was a real leap in the dark, to be honest. There was no perspective or any idea. I just saw what happened, went in there, and it wasn't a very well run course. It was kind of, we learned that whatever the tutor said, do the opposite, and then you'd be right. So it was pretty piss poor. But the one thing that I gained from was the editing side of things. I really took to that like a duck to drakes.
What was it, do you think, about editing at that time that really drew you to it?
Well, same as now, is just the ability to change perspective with a juxtaposition of shots. It's very, very simple. Shot A, shot B means one thing. Put them together, you got something else. You got C, and you can swap, and then you got D. You could, it's just that simple. That's simply what it's. There was nothing, and there was no sense of editing theory or any sort of bigger idea than that. That's what I mean. But I still can remember the excitement I felt. That it was like, wow, it was an epiphany, as small as it was, small as a moment. It made a big, obviously clearly influenced my life and career.
Absolutely. When you went out on your own then and began working and editing music videos, so you edited videos for Prodigy, Bulb, Radiohead, Coldplay, Kylie Minogue, Chemical Brothers, to name a few. I was wondering what that period of your editing career was like, and moving from assisting, choosing to go freelance. That's always can be a risk. I was wondering, was there any fear or anything that you felt from the perspective of being tentative about moving out onto your own and embarking on that?
Yes. Now listen. Now, so when I said I went freelance, it wasn't that I decided to do so. It's the company I was working for had to close down over a weekend because of a building regulation screw up. I had a job one week, the following week I didn't. So I was sort of thrown, and I wish I had the cojones to be able to go and do that, but I didn't. And then 6 months later, I was going, because I remember saying to my wife, who's self-employed at the time, we were living together in London, and my wife, of course, I would like to hasten to add, she was working for herself, and I said, oh God, I could never do that. 6 months before, I was actually self-employed, and then 6 months afterwards, I just said to myself, why didn't I do this before? It's great. And I hit the ground running, and it worked out very well. So I didn't have time to be afraid. It was immediate. It wasn't something that I decided and thought at length and went through all the ramifications and the kind of, so it was sink or swim. We had just bought a flat the year before, so that made it sort of slightly scarier as well. Plus, it was the first, it was that big crash in the late 80s that destroyed the yuppie movement or whatever. Inflated property prices, everything this is all going to last forever, and then suddenly crash. Sounds familiar, doesn't it? And so interest rates on mortgages were high, up to 15% at one point. So yeah, it was pretty scary, but I was actually, in work pretty much straight away. I did look around for a couple of weeks for another job, permanent job, but then I realized actually doing stuff for record companies is more fun than being a full-time employee somewhere. So that's that. It was no tentative or fear or whatever before. I hadn't decided it. I was thrown out, and then within a couple of months I was like, this is going really well, and it did so for 15 years. And I started out. It took 5 years to get to the level of them in terms of the acts you described. It took 3 to 5 years to really get into that level. Obviously, I initially started out doing like electronic press kits or doing re-edits of dance videos. I became a bit of an expert on Italian house videos at that time. So yeah, like I say, once it was moving, it was great, grand, it was fine. So,
what did editing music videos over that period teach you?
I suppose it taught me to work with music. No, I mean, I found I had an affinity to work with music, to bring the sound of the music out, and to work with the actual rhythm of the music. My idea was from the start that I had to marry the pictures and the sound, so it felt like it was a unified whole. So it enhanced the music, and it helped to make it more of a emotional involvement on the part of the listener, especially the more interesting work written by the people who were singing it or performing it, rather than manufactured bands. And what I learned, one of the big things I learned, is that if you cut something that's rhythmic, even say it's a narrative, not performance, it will actually have a great chance of being in sync with the track when you lay it on, and you could actually lay it to different tracks. What I mean is, essentially, is that you're looking for rhythm and flow, and that will then marry itself to music as well as editing to the music specifically. So I learned that. I learned to have a lot of just how to work fast and to kind of make decisions quickly, to hear things in the track that I could then and see a shot or something that would work well in an early rather than just scrolling up and down rushes kind of in a half-hearted way. I learned the value of kind of delivering something that really, really rocked, really kind of just felt like it was the marriage was perfect between the and the other thing as well, I suppose I learned afterwards was that myself and my colleagues were kind of doing it, and then we had no idea or sense that it was about iconic this, that, or the other. We knew we were doing well and enjoying it, but in terms of the historical aspect, we hadn't a clue. We were just in the middle of it and having fun. We did turn around to each other occasions saying, "This is great. We're being paid to do this." Was there anything else I learned? Don't do freebies. That was the other one.
Always good advice. What about the professional self-management part of the job? Because as you said, if it took you kind of 3 to 5 years to get to the level of some of the artists I named, that means one job is consistently leading on to the other, and you're building a reputation as you go as well. Was there anything specific about working in that industry at that time that you had to learn, or that stands out as being a pivotal moment in terms of making sure that one job is leading to the next? Or did you just focus on the one you were doing, do that as best you can, and let it speak for itself?
I did initially, and the latter, I did the jobs as they came in. So, and then I had fun doing them, and I made them, and I did my job, but I had as I said, I have a natural affinity that I didn't know I really had, so that whenever I did something, even if it was like one of the first things I did was I was asked to do a Bananarama mega mix of a mega mix of 3 or 4 of their hits, and take the videos that were and resync them into that, recut them into that, and so that that the record company were very impressed, because what I did was I had fun, I played around, so I actually used shots from different videos and lip synced them to other songs part of the way through, so that it wasn't just here's the chunk for this video and here's the chunk for that song and that song and that song. So mixed it up a lot more, made them, and made shots that they weren't edited together, work together in this new cut. But then, so that was, I did that, and then I got the next job and next job. So I went from job to job and built up contacts. And what people generally look for is somebody who will deliver, is disciplined, but then also better, still has a spark, has something else. But a safe pair of hands, that's the basic thing that people will be looking for. So I gave him that, and the jazz hands as well, and the extra little bit of fun. And so I did that for then, but then about after a couple of years, I just basically then made the decision that I was going to turn down cheesy pop manufactured boy girl band stuff and do less of that, and then put my efforts into doing work with interesting bands or artists who clearly had their own sense of what they're about and wrote their own music and recorded their own, had a much more involvement, artistic involvement in what was going on. So that's what, for instance, Pulp, they had a very strong sense of visual aspects. Blur, you name these people, they had a bigger sense of involvement than, these, I've done quite a few manufactured pop outfits, but I just at a certain point I went, I'm bored with this. This is not interesting. This is just as one person said, it's fantasy and glamour and nothing else. So none of those, very few of those videos have made it into the pantheon, whereas the ones that I held out for have. So that was one thing that was very conscious, and then it was also because doing things like that meant you were going to be working on more interesting ideas. And more interesting ideas are more challenging, and they're a bit more brain work to get to work. And they have there's a different thing. So it meant that I'd be creatively kept interested and stimulated, because instead of doing a cheesy pop video is essentially the same one. Each one doesn't matter who was in it. It's just get enough shots of the members of the band, see them all dance together, the dance routine, the lights, the fantasy, the glamour, yada yada. Whereas somebody of a more interesting ilk would be attractive to directors who would have more interesting ideas. And then you've got to get those ideas, help to get those ideas to work. So then I think enhanced. I mean, when I did the Firestarter video for Prodigy, that was it. That was such an incredible experience because of the impact of the song and the video kept together. And then it's kind of, not that I could write my own checks, but it was just like, wow, that's a calling card. It still is. I mean, it still has, although I've met somebody recently who's 21 who hadn't heard of the song. So I thought that's brilliant. I've waited 30 odd years for that.
I'm sure they will have went on and found it and realised how brilliant and genius Prodigy are. So
maybe not that kind of thing. I don't care. I'm not that pushed, but it was interesting to meet them. But I don't want to be too much of it, like clinging to past glories. But that was an extraordinarily pivotal moment.
Do you watch any modern music videos? Do you rue the state of the music video industry?
That's two questions. Answer the first question. I did up to before COVID, funnily enough, and I have a whole bunch of videos that I've got copies of because of my contacts rather than stealing them. And there's some amazing work, some extraordinary work. But I haven't really paid much attention in the last 3 or 4 years, to be honest. It's kind of I spend more time listening to new music rather than looking at music videos. Do I rue this? So I have a knowledge up to 2019. Kind of interesting because I don't think I'm not sure was there anything that put me off? There wasn't. But it's just and I just wasn't maybe in the loop for. I mean, I tell you what it was for relatively recently. I was a judge on the UK Music Video Awards, so I actually got to see quite a lot of stuff. There you go. And now I'm not, and which is good one way, and I have more time, so I don't have to spend a long time. I've had to, you have to look at 96 videos and whittle them down to 6.
Yeah.
So that's what they used to do. So that would explain that, perhaps. But also, so to answer your second question, do I rue the state of the music? I can't really say because it's different. The circumstances are different, and people have always been exploited in the music video business, but just not to the same extent as since the internet and file sharing fucked everything up. And but it's always the case. The record companies always find a way to screw the artists, the creatives. And so it's essentially the same now. And I refuse to do, I'm not in the market for doing a video for nothing. And I'm not saying back when I was doing them, people made a living because they were paid, because people bought product, because there's a return for bands and for artists and for record labels. So once that economic model went, then it was, the people still wanted to do music videos, and I think record labels were happy for people to do them for fuck all, and that became the standard. So it's kind of almost like they're training videos for directors, for commercials, or for some other things. Now, occasionally you do get you have to be a major artist to be able to have a fairly decent budget. But I'm not absolutely 100% sure about this, but I have the feeling that, say, a major artist's budget for a video would be the same as what would have been a budget for an emerging artist 30 years ago. I mean, the Pulp video for a song called This Is Hardcore, which, was actually an anti-single. It wasn't, anyway, the budget for that video was £250,000.
Well.
And it should have cost £350,000. Now, and the average video for a band starting out would be between £20,000 and £40,000. And you'd be quite a few 150 grand videos, 70, so I think 40-50 grand now is what say something like Snow Patrol would pay.
Yeah.
I think. But it's so it's very difficult to so in terms of this, I think there's been really interesting work done despite that. And there's also, again, there's like interesting, I mean, back in about 5 or 6 years ago, like videos for bands like Battles and The National, and we're all really interested in high quality stuff. Around 2008, 2009, or 2007, 2008, 2009, the arse fell out of the business and it was in a heap, but it's sort of grown back again. Now, if you can get your 2.5 million, or you get loads of views on YouTube, you can get some of that money back, but that generally goes back to the record label, not to the artist. And it doesn't go back to the maker either.
Yeah.
If they've done it for nothing, it's sort of like, thanks very much, see ya. I always like to imagine if record labels operated in, like, went to a restaurant and said, I'd like to have a 5-course dinner, but I've enough money for a Big Mac and fries. Is that okay? To hear what they'd be told. But there you go. Yeah, maybe I should go and have a look, see what's going on. But yeah, I mean, the XX did some really interesting videos, and they had tied in with car companies, so you'd have a way of you'd feature different things without it being too overt. Yeah, and the people, I've seen videos which have been very inventive, like acknowledging that there's nothing in the budget, and they've actually done very, very interesting videos. But you have to be very, very clever. So yeah, so I don't necessarily rule. It's just anything. It's just the nature of the business. That's what's changed. I did still give out to people for basically having loads of music on there, owning loads of music without having paid for it.
Yeah,
that's very old fashioned to me.
I don't think so.
That's why MTV's gone. That's why all this stuff is gone. That's why there's no more interest in bands. Is because you stole the music.
So coming out of music videos, am I right in thinking, I'm sure you did some kind of narrative work. I know some of your music videos are narrative strands and threads, but was Charlie Casanova your first narrative feature?
Yes, because what I did was basically, it's just sort of the path was music videos, then doing commercials with some of the directors I worked with on music videos. And then I started doing editing commercials in Ireland from about 2000, 2001. And then and then split my time between London and Dublin. And then, so around 2008, things were very difficult for people because it was my second massive global financial crash to experience of. So I sold my flat and then based myself in Ireland because I'd already done 2 or 3 short films. I did my first short film in 1999. And then a couple or 3 or 4 more in the in the 2000s, including a film called Screwback for a director called Brian O'Malley, with whom I was editing commercials in Dublin. So yeah, so Charlie Casanova was the first feature-length narrative, long-form thing. So I figured I just pivoted, sold the flat in London, and figured the whole commercials thing wasn't going to last. So I needed to pivot back again a bit till I made a decision. I'm going to concentrate on long form.
When you start moving into drama, was there any kind of learning curve in terms of coming from music videos, or were you already kind of working in a narrative kind of sense when you were editing music videos?
Well, no, I mean, in terms of editing, it's how you tell a story. So it kind of is important, and how you edit to tell a story. So I had a sense of that from observing. I'd worked as an assistant on long form narrative TV shows, not necessarily not film, but films. But so and you pick it up kind of by osmosis, by kind of watching films. But of course, the one thing technically was that I had no experience of was how to structure, projects to deal with a long form film or project. And then also how to, keep the narrative arc intact all the way through. And so, but the first 2 or 3 projects I did they were good learning experiences because they weren't as pressured. I mean, Terry McMahon's Charlie Casanova was a self-funded thing. He was the client, and there was nobody else involved. So it was essentially what we would just work together on that. It was also, a very wild and unpredictable and unconventional film in terms of its structure. So it was kind of, in a way, I kind of enjoyed that as a way of starting out, because I could pick it up relatively quickly about how things were actually done by using that as a yardstick, as saying that's how Terry did it, which is very, very unconventional, very and effective in its own way, obviously. So then after that, I kind of just learned on each project. I mean, there's a certain element of walking in saying, yeah, I could do that, and then you go, well, how do I do this, and then just wing it,
Yeah. You may have answered this, but I'm going to ask the question anyway. I think editing is the last chance, I suppose, in the process to rewrite the work again. And I was wondering, as you were learning on those projects, where your sense of story and your story sensibilities and dramatic sensibilities have come from. Does it just come from the work? You mentioned learning just kind of by osmosis, watching films and stuff like that. Any particular thoughts on that?
Well, one thing that's kind of what I hadn't thought of before when I got into doing long form was you can actually rewrite the script. You can change things around. And so I was actually kind of, in a way, taken by surprise when I first encountered it on a film, and they've generally been quite mild. Let's put this scene here instead of there, and then you try and figure it out. But it's so I've kind of learned that directly and practically by being given notes to try and by the director or by the producers or whatever to or the writer to say, oh, let's try this here. This doesn't work, because obviously it's the sense of, as you hinted at earlier, it's going from page to set to screen are very the story, the essence of the story can change, and so you might something that looks good on the page doesn't work quite so well on screen, so you have to kind of do something about that. So yeah, so it's about you're serving the story the whole time, and you have to make it better and make it more interesting, and find things that people didn't think were there. But again, coming back to what I said earlier when I was starting out, when I discovered editing, is you can rechange the juxtaposition of shots, and then it can become something stronger without you don't know it's there. There's emotional beats that could be mined and discovered that come out of the performance that you can then say, okay, well, maybe we need to do something different as a result of that. So you have to be responsive. So when I've had, more recent years, I've had really, really much kind of more extreme elements of being able to go, you know what, and I've learned, so either I'm asked to do it and then I figure it out, or I might say, do you know what, why don't this shot scene needs to go before this scene. I think it'll be much stronger because there's information that you're getting there in the scene that's later that will work more effectively if it was earlier. And that maybe and also just taking out scenes. Sorry, you don't need that one. You don't need that one. You don't need that one, which kind of maybe break people's hearts, because it might be a scene that the art directors sweated their back off trying to make something, and then it's like just callously cut away. It's about serving the story, as I said, or there might be a note from some executive would say, I've had a situation where somebody doesn't like one of the actors and it's just a bias, and they say, can we have less of that actor, please? And so regardless of the effect it might have on the story, yes, because I don't like them. So that's where you go.
There's a quote that I love. I can't remember who it's by, but it is, I'm probably paraphrasing a little. Perfection is not when there is no more to add, it's when there is no more to cut. It makes me think of cutting and getting rid of anything that's superfluous to telling a really good story.
Yeah, you trim the fat, you get to the essence, and and obviously this perfection is a very slippery concept anyway. So it's knowing when you feel that it's done.
Yeah.
You feel that it's like kind of, I find for me it's a very simple thing, which is that when I'm watching something and I'm not thinking about the edits and I'm enjoying it as a piece that I know actually I'm in my head, I'm nearly done. That's the point. And I don't wait. I don't yearn for it. I don't say at this point, by the seventh version of this film, I will be like this. It's just, it happens. I let it happen. So I like to be taken by surprise. Like it's gone halfway through and I'm gone, oh, fuck, I haven't even realized time has gone. So that's where you kind of know it's not necessarily perfect. Nothing's ever perfect, but it's as close to, damn it, as close as to having a soul, having an essence as a piece.
How do you go about maintaining, I guess, a sense of the bigger picture or of what the audience experience of a film or episode of TV will be, and ensuring you kind of don't get dragged into the weeds, maybe, or tunnel vision on particular scenes or beats or moments? Or is that just part of the collaboration, that there's so many other voices there that it's impossible to?
But yeah, but also I always try and think what it would feel like watching it for the first time for somebody. Like, what will the average viewer feel? As and then, yeah, obviously you have, I'm there. I'm the only one pushing on the keyboard with the screens and making those decisions happen. So I'm not the only arbiter anyway. But I also try and, when I'm, say, maybe arguing for something, a performance, I would say it in terms of, I see it in terms of what the viewer, the out there, the average viewer would gain, as that I would see, and I would try to be eloquent about and clear. Not that it's not me, I'm not the viewer. I'm just trying to say this is something I think is really good because of this, and this. And if it's not, and if there's everybody goes, no, Tone, you're talking through your hoop, then I would go, fair enough, give it a go. But it's there are other also, but a lot of the a lot of one's work as on editing films or TV series is responding to notes. So people would say something, and that's then you go, well, we might learn something from that, and then you get something else that becomes something that pulls you out of the weeds. I feel that I work very hard mentally to be as objective as I can, so that I don't inflict biases. I don't have any ideology about how I should cut it. I don't feel I have anyway, but I don't have any strict things, rules. I just respond to what's been shot and what's on the script and what's the performance, the music that's used, whatever we can use, temp or whatever, to help, and I respond to that, and then adding my own sort of interpretations of those things, but to try and make it as objectively interesting and working for a general audience. And there's a lot of times where there's something I might have worked on, and then I will go, oh, you know what? We'll can it. This hasn't worked. Go down. You try everything. You try and go. The one thing I try not to say, or I tell people not to say as well, but it's sometimes it's hard. Sometimes my face says it, but you just say that'll never work. Never say that. You should always it's really, the response is, that's interesting. Let's give it a go. Let's see what happens. Even if you feel your heart sink into your boots, you've been asked to do it. You should honor the note anyway, but also you should give it a go. See what happens. You might be wrong. Oh God, did work.
Yeah.
And I often say, when somebody asks for something and I do it and it works really well, much better than what I did, I always usually say, well, fuck it, I should have done it in the first place, shouldn't I? Oh well, moving on. Sort of to make a thing out of it. So that's my kind of would be my way of, way of keeping the objectivity and the sense of the essence of the story working for a general viewer.
Great. Sounds like you enjoy, as much as anyone can enjoy, that notes process then, and the opportunity to just play and try new things.
Yeah. Well, no. I mean, there is. I mean, I think there's an editor called William Kahn, I think, whose quote is, "Always honor the notes, even if it shrivels your soul." So there is obviously, it's kind of a sense, it's understandable in one sense, like, oh God, do I have to? So, but I think, you have to be a professional and do it. And also, like I say, you can discover things. And I just go, keep the stress levels low, and do So have a go, see what happens. And I'm not a experimenting for experimenting's sake kind of fella. But if somebody says let's try this, and it sounds like it's just wacky, you never know. Give it a go, and then see what happens. You know, I mean, the trickiest ones are notes from where people saying, "Can we have that fella, that actor who's maybe a significant actor? He needs to be more scared in this scene," and he was filmed and told to be jolly. You go, and that's when I say, I've just got to tell you, like my application to join the magic circle keeps being turned down, but I don't understand because I'm being asked to perform miracles all the time.
So when it comes to projects, how do you become involved in projects now? Are you, I'm assuming, correct me if I'm wrong, that directors are approaching you based on your previous body of work? Are you then like reading scripts saying, I'm interested, I'm not? What does that look like for you?
Well, what happens is, if I'm rarely, if ever, approached by a director. I'm usually approached by somebody from the production saying, what's your availability?
Okay.
And I say, we got this script, this series, this thing with so-and-so, so-and-so. I look them up. And then I say, yeah, I'm interested, I'm available. And if I am available and interested, they send me a script or two, and then read the scripts, and then get back and have a chat. And then it then gravitates to an interview with the director and producer. And then, we're on. And a lot of it is, I mean, you get one gets the approach from the body of work that you've done. So having a good resume clearly helps. It's kind of opens a lot of doors already, so you're not in the market. The one thing I have to say is I don't have an agent, so I kind of do everything myself.
Have you had an agent in the past?
No.
So you've always represented yourself.
Yeah, well, when doing music videos, like you just go down in Soho, you just went down the pub and see who was having a pint. So you're not working, are you? Come on, we'll do this video. And it was a smaller network. I mean, I'm exaggerating. We weren't all in the anyway. We were actually anyway. It was so there was a smaller network of people knew what was going on. So you just phone them. And then I was actually, maybe I was being disingenuous because in London, I was represented by an editing company that had editing suites, so they, handled the job for me. So they weren't in the purest form my agent, but they were I was part-time member of the staff when I was in London, and I had cut stuff for them, and they did the invoicing, did the billing, and told me what to invoice them. So so in that respect, yeah. But then in terms, that's the closest I've got. I haven't had somebody like as a separate entity represent being my agent. So it's a bit tricky because I'm split. I work in London and in Dublin or in Ireland and in the UK a fair bit, but I'm not one place. I'm not in London purely for London, if you know what I mean. So, and it's more of a thing. It'd be more. I have a lot of contacts here that I can deal with directly. My preference is, if as much as possible, is to have the work here. It's not to be away from home a lot. But that's, obviously you can't control that.
Yes.
Although even like the last two or 3 years, no agent. I don't think any agent would have done better than me. Just the dumb look, it's dumb luck, or just getting the calls and doing the hustle, doing the negotiations. I like dealing with people.
Yeah,
I like to get directly involved, and I think producers, whether they feel they're getting a better deal, or they can exploit me more easily, I don't know. But they like cutting straight to the organ grinder, not having to go through the monkey.
Yeah, in one way, it's much easier.
Yeah, it's more direct. And I apologize to all agents out there. I don't mean you're all monkeys. It was just a figure of speech. Sorry.
Notice. When it gets to that point and you're working with a director, because I come to this world from the perspective of a director, how do you like those conversations to go? Or what materials can a director potentially provide you with to make your life easier? How do you like that director-editor relationship to work?
Well, lots of coffee and cake.
Excellent.
I mean, I'm working with so many different directors that it's a bit of a broad church, but I'm obviously being prepared, being organized, knowing what they want, having a good recall of their footage, being easy, good. Well, we get on well together.
Always good.
Yeah, stuck in a room together, and I've been very, very lucky. There's one or two people I've worked with that both of us would have been, if it was in medieval times, would have been stabbed each other with a long sword within a half an hour. But generally, I get on. We get, it's been good convivial relationships. There's kind of humps, bumps, but there's might be differences of opinion, but it's but it, like somebody being who's and then it's fun to be with, like can be somebody who isn't sitting on my shoulder the whole time, isn't very controlling, because I don't think that it's not very pleasant, and it's not actually, you should trust people. You should trust everybody, if they're any good. At the same time, being direct and clear, but allowing time for just to shoot the breeze, because I think it's really important in a cutting room to have conversations about stuff you're into as well, because that gives me clues about, it gives each other clues about the other, and you just talk about take breaks to get away from the intensity of the process, so that when you can you can then go back in like 5 or 10 minutes and you're kind of a bit refreshed. I don't like night owls. I don't like working with night owls, because I'm an early morning fella, and I'll get loads of stuff done, and then it's done. But I've had most people appreciate that I worked with, and nearly everybody appreciates that, because they like to get away, have family life. The younger directors tend to be more really eager and very intense, whereas older directors are a bit more knowledgeable or about themselves and laid back and kind of goes. So there's one director I worked with who was so laid back, he was almost horizontal. He said, he's like, you just said, asked, do I need to come in? I went, well, I'm not sure. There's nothing urgent. Okay, grand. I'll see you in a few weeks, or I'll see you whenever, And he would look at the footage online and go, yeah, great. Or just cuts online and send really good notes. So, it was a long-term project, and I barely saw him, which worked well. Yeah. And another director I worked with who had her desk right behind me the whole time. You learn to be flexible and how to engage with different people. One of the things I think that, being an editor is you're actually kind of a bit of a counselor. Like an cutting room can be a therapist's chair to a great extent. Maybe I should turn up. I mean, actually, that would scare people. But turn up either dressed as like an old-fashioned psychologist or as a priest. The priest one would scare people. That would be really scary. I'm going to hear your confession, my child. That would be terrifying.
So what do you think are qualities of really great editors?
Sense of rhythm, music, kind of having that sense of rhythmic structure, patience, a good few jokes, and ability to read people, diplomacy, a sense of, I'm really interested in storytelling and evoke emotional intelligence, to do that. Emotional intelligence, yeah, that's a very strong one, I think. And come back to the word, the one I mentioned second, patience. I think you need a lot of patience, and you should put yourself less to the forefront in terms of moaning or giving out about conditions, and sit back and just work through it, because nobody likes a moaner, and it is a known collective noun for editors. It's a whinge of editors. So I've learned to not to do that. As I do at a certain point, I just go like, well, I feel very strongly there's not enough time in the schedule, and then leave it at that. We'll try and make it work, but we might need an extra week, and then invariably we do, and then they go, okay. So that's in my experience, of course, not in everybody else's experience, to have that flexibility or whatever. But it's just be patient and keep your powder dry. I think it's just being able to watch rushes and see things and be able to take note taking is really important. One thing I do is I always write a diary of every day of work. I have a diary, what happened, what scenes were done, what was changed, who did what playouts went out. even if I never refer to it again, it's a good way at the end of the day to figure out what actually happened. Plus, you can actually have something to refer to if there's a dispute. Say, well, actually, that went out that day. So I found that was something I wasn't. I just sort of decided to do myself on the basis that there's so much going on, and such a big, like a long form film or TV episode, an hour long, whatever, there's quite a lot of stuff going on, and there's so much you can't keep it all in your head. And I actually like looking back on them as well when I'm, them between. Not that I spend all my time reading my diaries, but just a sense of, oh yeah, I remember that happened. I think it's good therapeutically. It's good to actually physically write. I will write with a pen on them in a journal, and I think it's good therapy. At the end of the day, to decompress.
I would agree wholeheartedly. I have far too many notebooks. So is that something that is like ritual? Will you go out and buy yourself a specific notebook at the beginning of each project, kind of, and then keep that?
No, I am actually, and also there's no such thing as too much notebooks, Jason. My wife disagrees, but I would buy an A4 size notebook, and that would be 3 or 4 projects.
Okay.
And then when that's full, then I move on to another one. It's not necessarily the same one. It's whatever I has to hand. But I keep them on my shelf. I actually still have my own notebooks when I was an assistant.
Cool.
Back in the 80s, because I was working very complicated, and in the analog days, before pre-digital days, visual effects on video was very complicated. So I had to. It's kind of I think it stems from that discipline of keeping notes. And also when I was working on tape on music videos, I had to do, I was editing on cassette tapes before Avid turned up, or before non-linear editing turned up. So I had to write notes of all the rushes anyway. I think I have that discipline. But I think that's a very good thing to do at the end of the day. You just get yourself into a space where you can just think about it, write down, remember everything, and then you've kind of cleared your head, and then ready for the next day.
Yeah. I think we've touched on this when you were speaking about qualities of good editors, but I was going to ask you about maybe top tips for aspiring editors. So if I was to put the question to you this way, if you were starting your career out today and you kind of have some of the knowledge that you have of the industry as it stands, where would you begin, or how would you start to build your career today?
Oh, that's interesting. I suppose what I'd say is that if my career was different and I was starting out and I was 21 again, it would be obviously different things. I would just, one piece of advice I give to people who are assistants. You'd have to just get work as an assistant, try and get trained, and become an assistant, and then one simple thing I'd say I've said to people for years is you keep your eyes open, your mouth shut, and your nose clean. Which basically, only speak when appropriate, and don't get into trouble. Don't be lippy or full of yourself, or be humble. You have to be humble. To watch, absorb. It'll all become useful later on. You won't even know where it came from. And then it's just assisting. Get in. I think the thing to do, is obviously this. What's different now is that there's loads of courses, and really, really, really good courses to learn to an incredibly high level in Ireland. And so, get into a course, figure it out, but see what you're into, because that's a great place to learn. Like I did in a much more smaller and more Father Ted way, accidental way. You kind of got that opportunity to really learn on proper equipment with good tutors, and all the various courses around Ireland. And then from that, you can then, approach post-production supervisors, producers, look at people's credits, and send your CV and say people you like, the work you like, and then just bring them up or call them up and say, how's it going? I remember so I'm back in 1984, I was on the Dole in London. I was occasionally working as a runner on shoots. Then I read this article about this editor in the trade magazine Broadcast, and he was working for this prestigious editing company. So I rang the company and I got through to him and said, "Do you mind if I call in, have a chat?" And he said, "Yeah, come on in." And so I did. I went in, and then he was, but we had a chat, and then I went off. And then about a year later, or less than a year later, I was working as a trainee tape operator in this other company, and he walked in. He'd just been taken on by the company I worked for, and he was a superstar editor. He was with the MD of the company, and he walked in and he looked at me, just stopped, he went and pointed at me, and went, "Film." And everybody went, "What?" And I went, "What?" He says, "I remember you came in to see me last year, but the only thing I can remember was you saying the word film instead of film." So, and then he became my mentor, almost like, so from that, me make that phone call, there's random things that can happen. So you have to kind of make the call, throw the pebble in the pond, see where the ripples go. Work very hard, work hard, do the job, and then also, if you can, while you're working, maybe training or assisting, shoot stuff and edit it. Just cut stuff, see what happens, show people it. Back then it was really different. Back then, I'm not moaning like an old lad, but when my day, we had fuck all the facilities to do all this shit, where anybody could do it on their own fucking iPhone, it's not. I'm not doing that. I just did that impersonation just to give you an idea of what I'm not. Anyway, that it's there's all these opportunities. So cameras on phones, use a phone. You can edit on a phone. I mean, you can do, but edit, cut stuff. Just take out just try stuff out, as well, because that's kind of that. I know it's kind of. I think it's, in a way, it's kind of karmic, if you give the woo woo term, but it does help.
Yeah. I love the mentor story, and I think it's a really important one as well. And even today, in my experience, there's lots of people who you can get in contact with, and this industry, in my experience, is very generous, and people will get back and give you the time if they have it.
Yes.
So for people considering editing, would you encourage people to learn on Avid, Premiere, or DaVinci, or do you think it matters as much anymore what people train on?
Well, I think it matters a great deal, and I think you should learn all three if you can. The reason that Avid is more important is that it's the generic non-linear editing system. It's the verb, it's the noun. Like Google is for search engines, Avid is for editing. Producers say, let's get back to the Avid. They don't say, let's get back to the Premiere Pro or the Final Cut Pro or the Resolve. It's the one thing it's the workhorse for the most of the global long form industry. And so, but Premiere is used a fair bit, but something like Final Cut Pro or Premiere used to be more favored by documentary makers or director editors, because it's easier to learn. But Avid still has the advantage of, when you're working on a show or a TV show, drama, or on a film, you can work as teams can plug into the same central data, whereas Avid or Premiere, Adobe took their time, didn't really want to invest in that until the last 3 or 4 years, and it's kind of an add-on that I believe doesn't quite work. I mean, I've used Premiere, and I like Premiere, and I like it a lot, and I've used it on various specific projects because of its quality. So I'm agnostic about one or the other, but Avid is if you want to get into scripted drama or films, Avid is the one if you're to concentrate on. But it also, I think it's important to expand your skill set. It's not just one. To know one editing system, you should know at least two.
I have one last question, and I'm going to try and think of the right way of putting it. So I usually ask people if they have any kind of recommended resources that they would encourage people to check out. But before we began kind of recording proper today, we were talking about your photography and that side of your work. as well. And I guess maybe it is more of a question about, I think it's really important to have a sense of balance in this industry, particularly as freelancers. And I was wondering how you balance.
How do I balance? Yeah, I suppose it comes with experience. To be honest, you learn things that aren't as bad as you thought they were going to be, and it's the wisdom of experience does help. But also, I mean, my only my sense is that I've got this my favorite phrase. It's a Latin phrase, and it's festina lente, which means make haste slowly. You know, so, and it doesn't mean being lazy. It means actually being productive, but not rushing. You only learn that from finding out rather than knowing it, I think. Unless there's some gifted, you're a gifted person who has this serenity and wisdom. I think the important thing in terms of personal resource is to concentrate on reducing stress. And one thing so you just basically, we are, as human beings, to have a major tendency to catastrophize everything. And I'm not immune to it. Be awake at 4 a.m. going, oh, this happened and that happened. Oh Jesus. And then I wake up and I go, oh wow, okay, it's not as bad. One thing I've actually been doing recently, which is very useful and it means a bit more discipline, but I've been getting up. I get in 2 hours before everybody else, and I basically have a bit of breakfast, read the paper on the phone, take it nice and handy, then work on the stuff that I was concerned about the previous evening, and then I usually find it's actually done, and it sorts itself out. It resolves itself. The sleeping overnight, everything just helps. So by 9 o'clock, when everybody's turning up, I've actually got quite a lot of work done, and it kind of just clears the decks then for the rest of the day. So then it means actually I don't work late. The likelihood of working late is completely reduced. So rather than staying till 9 o'clock trying to figure out something, I go at 6 and then come in and the following morning and I'm twice as fast because you just have clarity of the day waking up. So that's one thing so it's about part of the strategies to take stress out. Okay. And, and I'm up seeing my last project. There was a point where I was just thinking, oh God, how's this going to end? And then it sort of, eventually solves itself. I don't want to say that every time it'll solve itself because I don't want to be complacent. My view is be concerned, but don't worry. Worry means you're like whimpering under the duvet, whereas concerned is going, right, how do I figure this out? It's much more productive.
It's like a solutions-focused mindset.
Well, yeah, I guess, but it's also not letting yourself be overwhelmed by the negativity imp and the anxiety imp that is in everybody's head. Tell those fuckers to shut up. This kind of thing. It's not easy. So, and the other thing is trust yourself. Be kind to yourself. Trust yourself. Be your best friend. Don't be your worst enemy. Don't say this is shite and it's all going to go to hell. Just be kind, be good to yourself. That's a resource that people ignore and actually don't, I think, underutilize. My other, so that's sort of things that I've kind of would say. The other thing I would say very quickly, because they are key things, but they're not covered. But the Irish Screen Editors has a resources page that has a number of links, quite a lot of links to videos and to organizations and training and etc. So there's a lot of stuff there that is would be very, very useful. I have to admit I have an interest because I'm the chair of Irish Screen Editors. So just in this case, there's a conflict of interest, but that is a very good resource.
I will link to it in the show notes as well, so people can go check it out. But for now, I'll say Tony Kearns, thank you very much for taking the time to talk to me. Really appreciate it, and it's been incredibly insightful.
Well, thank you, Jason. I've enjoyed every minute, and I could still go on, but hey, we all got stuff to do. Anyway, take care, everybody, and I'll hopefully talk to you soon.
And that is a wrap on Tony Kearns. thank you for listening to the Filmmaker's Playbook. If you're enjoying the show, please follow and rate us on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. If you have feedback, questions, or topics that you'd like me to cover on the show, please put them in the comments on our Instagram page at the Filmmaker's Playbook Podcast. You can follow me on Instagram at Jason Branagan Director, and you can follow Tony on Instagram at Tony C. Kearns. Links and social media handles are all in the show notes. Join me next week when I talk to producer Alex Jones. Until then,